Welcome to the Realizations Podcast. I'm Andrea Gordon, your host, and I'm excited to explore the world of real estate with you. In a world where perceptions often overshadow reality, Realizations seeks to redefine what it means to be a realtor. Join me as we peel back the layers of the industry, uncovering inspiring stories and celebrating the good in real estate. Whether you're a homeowner, a fellow realtor, or simply curious, this podcast is for you. Welcome to Realizations, where perceptions meet reality. Let's dive right in. Welcome to the Realizations Podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Gordon, and today I'm very honored to have Mahwish Syed Designs with me today. She is an amazing designer based out of Manhattan. She's written a book. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about healthful living within the framework of design and how she came to those sorts of conclusions in her work. Hello, welcome. It's lovely to have you here.
Lovely to be here with you, Andrea.
So we've had a little bit of a chat before this meeting, and I'm just fascinated with you. One of the things that I want to bring up is the fact that you have been a designer your whole life, but that your design work was particularly affected by your self-contracting and going into remission from breast cancer. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about well, not a lot, a little bit, a lot about how healthy design helps people in their lives, how you've managed to incorporate this, how you came to these conclusions, and your educative background that enables you to be so specific in the work that you do. So just with that preamble, tell us a little bit about yourself and your work.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I have been a maker of beauty my whole life. And we were talking about how many years. And I would say ever since I was a little girl, I have been designing things. And professionally, I have been designing for a quarter of a century, whether it's interiors, whether it's fashion, what we wear, jewelry. But basically what that tells you is that I'm constantly creating and finding ways to create beauty, right? And when we talk about beauty, a lot of times people think of, oh, cosmetics or something that's on the surface of things. And what we're kind of delving into right now, and what I love and have made my life's mission, Andrea, is to design from the point of healing, the healing power of beauty, right? And how it can be more than on the surface. It can actually be from the inside out. So this conversation is about empowering your audience to become their own interior designers. You are going to be designing from within, and my wonderful, delicious approach is about looking at your environment from my lens. And that lens was definitely informed by my illness. And I learned what I call my pomegranate seeds of wisdom. My pomegranate seeds, meaning the story of Persephone, the goddess of the seasons, which is what I wrote in my book, Purgatory to Paradise. And the reason why I believe so strongly in that analogy is that I often find that we as people are divorced from the concept of death. And since I was faced with my own mortality, having faced cancer, I realized that it was my greatest teacher. And it really helped me to understand that sometimes I was, and this is where the word purgatory comes from, that we live life by default. And that sometimes we live by the status quo, or a certain habit that, oh, I've always done it this way, so I'm going to continue doing it this way. And so that level of purgatory, or it could be that, you're renting a space and you don't feel like you can invest in your home because it's temporary. But then I often talk to people who lived in rentals their whole lives, and that becomes their home, and they haven't invested in their space that way because they have that mindset of it being temporary. So we're all here temporarily. We're all here for a short amount of time. So let's create the most beautiful healing space that we can. And so after cancer, I started auditing my home, and I started researching, and I realized that, now they're saying, before it was like 2/3, now it's like 90% of cancers is epigenetic, which means that it is the result of your lifestyle and your environment,
Hmm.
which is actually great news because that means that we have agency, right? We have the ability to either load that gun or not. And so
Right.
what can load that gun? And so environmental factors like toxins in your home, toxins in what you're imbibing, the clothing
Hmm.
that you wear,
Hmm.
the food that you eat off of, all of those things I started auditing, and I created protocols, because one of the things that you and I talked about offline is, I didn't know that, what tomorrow was going to hold for me. And cancer made me realize that, all these, big projects that I was dealing with that often take years, what if I didn't have that kind of time anymore? And
Hmm.
did I have access to that level of beauty, that level of what we call, we associate beauty with luxury, right?
Right.
Things, that's for other people. And what I believe and what cancer taught me is that beauty is for everyone, and
Hmm.
we deserve it. It's our birthright. And what better place for me to access all these wonderful designer techniques to look at that and create the healing power of beauty. And now science has a great word kind of backing me up, which is called neuroaesthetics, which
Right.
everybody's talking about. It's the hot word in design. And that
Hmm.
basically means how art and beauty affects your nervous system. And what
Absolutely.
affects your nervous system affects your health,
Hmm.
right? So we all,
Absolutely.
yeah. So like when I'm in a cancer diagnosis, I'm in a trauma state.
Hmm.
I'm not in my rest and relaxation parasympathetic state.
Hmm.
So what I started writing about in my book and started teaching about in my workshops is how to get myself out of that trauma state through design.
Hmm. That's beautiful. And your book, again, the title of the book is from.
It's Purgatory to Paradise: How
Very cool.
Cancer Helped Me Design an Authentic Life.
And where can people get this book? All over the place?
It's on Amazon, it's on Audible. So if you want to, be cooking and listening to me narrate, it is an amalgamation of my pomegranate seeds of wisdom. So it's not just a story of cancer, it also has a lot of decorative advice to be able
Hmm.
to create your paradise now.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I'm there with you. My stepson passed away from cancer at the age of 39,
I'm so
and my
sorry.
mother and father both died of cancer. My mom at 49 and my dad at 58.
Wow.
So cancer's been a big presence in my life. And one of the things that I've always said to people, because they wonder, how I have been as successful as I am, is that cancer made me realize what's important and what's not. um, Going through that with all these people that I adored was incredibly difficult. And I really, and you being a survivor, I respect you so profoundly. There's heroism in that. When you were initially diagnosed with cancer, did it take you out of the game for a while? What happened to you in that process?
Oh my God. I would recommend you don't do what I did. I was a single mom. My son was 9. I have my own business, and I was so scared that no one was going to hire me, Andrea, that I didn't tell my clients. I didn't tell anyone.
Hmm.
And I kept it a secret even from my extended family, because
My
my
goodness.
my mom's younger sister, my maternal aunt, had passed away from the same diagnosis the summer prior mine. So I was even scared to tell my mom because I thought it would just completely just devastate her.
Hmm.
And so I decided to just be that stoic,
Yeah,
Wonder
yeah,
Woman, which I write about. I said, please don't be Wonder Woman. Take the lesson.
right,
Don't do what I did.
right,
And
right.
I never stopped. I never stopped working. And I remember I was working on a 5 townhouse renovation of the public spaces, lobbies and hallways and outside in Chelsea.
Hmm.
And I remember going into a board meeting carrying like carpet samples, and it was soon after surgery. I couldn't even carry the stuff. And what was
Oh,
I doing? Like trying to just do it all and show up bandaged.
that's our culture. That's our
Yeah,
culture. Our culture
right.
is so terrified of death or anything that reminds people of sickness or anything that isn't just perfect that you're worried that you're going to be destroyed. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. You're exactly. Or I didn't want people's pity. I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. Like that was like an issue. So I went to that meeting and I couldn't lift the samples after the meeting. I had to go get a messenger to pick them up. And I didn't tell the board president until after everything was over and the project was done. Because
Hmm.
that was the stigma of like, I want them to know that I can do this. And
Right.
what are we valuing, Andrea? We're valuing productivity over life.
Absolutely.
Literally.
Absolutely. And, I've seen this happen before in real estate. A friend of mine, a wonderful agent named Tracy Maddox, got cancer. Went in, she ended up passing away. But during the time that she was ill, she was terrified to let anybody know because if you're weak, then people don't want you. Or if there's
Yes.
anything wrong, then people don't want you. Same thing that you went through. And it broke my heart because she couldn't really reach out and ask for the help that she needed in the circumstances. She was even frightened of other realtors not basically utilizing her weakness as a way to steal business from her, which, by the way,
Yeah.
I have found in real estate that most realtors are extremely collegial, care about one another. It's not what people think. All those stupid idiot shows on television where that they're all showing all this, viperish behavior. It's all bullshit, obviously. We're all in it as entrepreneurs for ourselves. Now, I mean, you're doing your design work at a phenomenal level. I mean, literally, folks, this woman is designing public spaces. She's designing multi-million dollar projects in New York City. She's at the top of her game, at the top of her field. And this epiphany that you had through your illness is a really wonderful and amazing thing because you can help so many people at all levels of the social strata. So that's a beautiful thing. Um, I'm always amazed at the places where design intersects with our lives because most people don't get, I mean, your desk lamp that you've got on, your the desk you're working on, your computer, your floor. Somebody had to think about that. There is thought and thoughts about aesthetics everywhere you go. It's just the who is the mind behind it that determines whether it is actually beautiful, solely functional, or kind of clunky, right?
Right, right. And thank you so much for sharing about yourself, Andrea. That means everything to me. I totally understand that, everyone's concerned with aesthetics and beauty, and I'm, a tastemaker and an image maker. I've been one for so many decades. What I, what you hit completely the nail on the head with is everyone deserves beauty. And what I started doing was I started doing workshops with other cancer survivors and people in active treatment, and just doing workshops about simple things that they can do from a designer's perspective to help them, settle into their parasympathetic state, rituals of reverence, I call them. And I have a course about this, which is called Claim Your Paradise, because everyone kept asking me the same questions. I'm like, I got to put it all in one place because I keep repeating, and this is great. So I ended up creating this course for both patients, but also providers, because I believe that doctors and service, anyone in any field, whether you're an acupuncturist, whether you're a therapist, the space that you bring the people in for treatment is also should be in alignment with your circadian health. It should be in help them. And who better than me to give these multi-million dollar ideas? And I'm like, but you can do it shopping your own home. Like, here's how basic it can get. Like, I'll give
Hmm.
you an example. when I was going through chemo, um, they recommended that, I get a silk pillowcase. And I'm like, I can't spend one more thing. And, I wasn't satisfied. And I had gorgeous silk scarves. I collect scarves from all my travels. So I had beautiful, pure silk scarves. So I started wrapping my pillows with the scarf. And I'm like,
Oh, no.
this is, why not? I'll shop my closet. And so then I started experimenting, literally redecorating my space and looking around my own space through that lens. And I started covering, my sofa pillows with different things. I'm like, oh, this looks different. This looks cool. And so I'm like, why not share that? Because a lot of people are like, well, I can't afford you. I can't afford this. I can't afford that. And that's true. It's expensive. So why not look around your own space and be creative? So that's what I
Hmm.
always say is simple hacks. Like another example is that, after cancer, what interior designer goes back and gets a certification in applied quantum biology? I mean,
You,
after,
you're the
right.
one who does that.
Of course, it makes perfect sense. And, all these scientific papers I was reading, and I realized the effect of light on cancers.
Hmm.
A lot of breast cancer is hormone related, right?
Yeah.
And our hormones are affected by light. And
Hmm.
we don't realize this, but that is, we used to live the majority of our biology is incredibly ancient, you guys.
Hmm.
Okay. So the way we used to live is we used to spend 90% of our time outdoors and 10% of our time indoors. So we had light all over our skin and our eyes, which we're photosynthesizing beings. We have photoreceptors all over our skin and we need it,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So we are inexorably tied to the seasons and tied to nature, which is where Persephone comes in, the analogy of the
Mm.
seasons and light and
Right.
dark. And she's the only Olympian god who can commute between the underworld and upper world because she's got one foot in both places. And that was a wonderful analogy for us, Andrea, because we also commute between our shadow and our light,
Right.
between our sleep and our waking, between
Beautiful.
nighttime and daylight. So
Hmm.
why not bring design from that place, right? Why not design embracing the darkness instead of trying to biohack our way out of it?
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is fascinating to me. For our listeners who don't know the myth of Persephone, and can you succinctly go
Yeah.
give us an idea of what that myth is?
Sure. So Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, and one day she was hanging out in a meadow picking flowers, and she was abducted by Hades, god of the underworld, and taken down into the underworld as to be his wife. And so while she was down there, Demeter was so despondent that she stopped, the crops from growing, and we had winter for the first time ever. And while Persephone was down there, she ate the food of the dead. She ate the pomegranate seeds. And so that meant that she has to spend time down there as well as with her mom. So half of the year when you have spring and summer, that Persephone's hanging out with Demeter, and then during fall and winter, Persephone's hanging out with her husband. So that is the story, which is also very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah,
So
it's beautiful. And Demeter was the goddess of fertility and crops and agrarian society, and was sort of like in a way, a development of the fertility goddess in many, many ways. So it's fascinating stuff. And also you mentioned circadian rhythms, which have to do with your waking and sleep cycles, and everybody's waking and sleep cycles, including animals. Tell us a little bit more about that.
sure. And by the way, on my Instagram, which is Mahwish Syed Designs, I talk a lot about circadian health and little tips and tricks that you can use. Number one thing, Andrea, again, going back to the power of the sun. Now, especially now, LEDs that are, incandescents are no longer, an option for us.
Right.
And I have a major issue with LEDs because of the light frequency is so limited and it doesn't give
Hmm.
you the vital range that we
Right.
actually need. Now,
Right.
until someone figures out a better system, What I recommend, again, these are simple protocols, is number one, when you wake up in the morning, do not turn on your LED lamp, do not look at your phone, but to go outside or look out your window at the brightest point in the sky because you're giving your body a signal. A
Hmm.
circadian cascade occurs
Hmm.
metabolically that sets your body up for optimal health for the rest of the day. So to look at the brightest point in the sky, it can be a cloudy day, it can be a dark day, but to look at the brightest point in the sky is really important to set your body straight. Now, going to bed at night as well, to not have a screen bathing your skin, right? A
Hmm.
lot of times people wear the blue blocking glasses, and I'm like, yeah, well, what about your arms and your chest? That's not being blocked. I
Yeah,
mean, hello, because don't
yeah,
forget,
yeah.
right? So try to set up a routine, which is, I also speak a lot about firelight, which, our biology is inexorably tied to these natural elements. It's the only natural source of infrared light other than the sun.
Right,
I'm sorry, but light a candle. You know
right.
what that does? It soothes you. It
Yes, it
it
does.
it actually helps you get back into the parasympathetic state. And you know what? Candles help you lose weight. Because I totally think so. Because if you have that ritual for yourself at night and you're in your parasympathetic state, then your sleep is better. And we all know that autophagy and apoptosis, which is your body's recycling of the cells, including
Hmm.
fat burning, happens while you are sleeping.
Right, right.
So that's the science behind the design. So, like, how do I design a space that has optimum light? For anyone, the number one thing to do, especially when you wake up in the morning, is draw your curtains, open up those blinds. I have so many clients, and I walk into the bedroom and the blackout shades are still down.
Right, 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 right.
And I'm like, open the shades, get that light in,
Yeah,
right? And the
yeah.
other thing is most modern windows, I don't know if you know this, Andrea, are laminated, right, to block UV for energy efficiency. Well, guess what?
Right,
We need UV. We
right,
need it.
right.
It's been villainized, right?
Hmm.
The sun has been villainized. And
Right,
so opening your window, and this is why I always say open your window, because sunlight's not polarized, it bounces onto the windowsill and any other surfaces to bring that vital light in. That's why I say open your window when you're driving, just a few inches to bring that light into your car because car windows are tinted,
right.
right? And you don't realize how much, especially during COVID, and we realized what vitamin D deficiencies we were all suffering from, right? And our
Right,
bodies, that's because we're divorced from nature. We're divorced from the sun. We have been trained to be afraid of the sun. We have to protect ourselves from the elements. So think about your rhetoric. Think about the way we speak and we frame nature, protection from the elements. Oh, by the way, mold problems in most of America is because we are not using porous building materials. We are
correct.
cladding our buildings with non-porous, plastic-based acrylic materials, siding, you name it,
Hmm.
bad, shoddy building materials that don't allow your walls to breathe. And hi,
Correct.
suddenly it's like mold problem. I'm like, hello, the mold problem, we're creating the problem. We're creating
Right.
that problem for by doing shortcuts and creating these what I call living sarcophagi.
And it's an interesting thing. When I was a little kid, my aunt owned tons of apartment buildings in the Bay Area. And my summer job when I came out to visit her was to clean out those apartments when people moved out. And it would always make me very, very sad because the carpets would be destroyed. And particularly in the bathrooms, there would be all this horrible black mold all over the windows. And the reason why there was that black mold over the windows was because people were showering in there, not opening the window, never cleaning it. That was what I was there to address, frankly. And it made me very sad because it said to me, these people are choosing not to respect themselves. These people are choosing not to respect the space that they're in, partly because they don't own it, So there's this feeling of whether you own it or not. I mean, and we've all done it. We've all gone to a hotel and dumped towels on the floor. I don't, because I think about the people that have to pick them up. But there's just a different attitude that you have when it's not yours. And people need to take ownership of whatever space they're in, whether or not they physically own it. And it will help them in both in their self-esteem, but also in just being healthier, as you've brought up. I thought to myself about those people that live with that horrible black mold on their windows. Why was that okay to them? It wasn't. It was not okay ever.
No.
And I have birds. You probably can't see in the background here, but I have a little Pacific parrotlet. This particular little Pacific parrotlet is named Percival, but my old parrotlet Pia, who lived a ripe old age and then unfortunately passed away about a year ago, um,
Right.
she, I was working long hours because I write at night and what have you, and she was staying up with me during that time period. And one year, she almost killed herself because she laid 11 eggs. And it was completely caused by the fact that I was not making it dark in the room when the sun went down and then bringing light into the room right when the sun came up. And I learned a very hard lesson. I mean, it was a very, very trying time, and she did almost die simply
Hmm.
because of light. So what you're saying
Yeah.
resonates absolutely profoundly with me. Everything that you're talking about, it's one of those things like, oh, duh, of course. Of course. My family's Icelandic. So how do you deal with people who live in worlds where where half of the year it's dark? What do you do about that?
I believe that when your body slows down, and by the way, research is showing that you store vitamin D over the summer months. So in northern hemispheres and further north, there's actually storage happening. And when we go into these rituals of honoring the dark and sleeping more and eating the root vegetables and all of those things are actually very much attuned with our biology. So it's not
Hmm.
so much about that, but I love to bring in the spiritual aspect of things. So the idea of like lighting those candles,
Right.
bringing that light within your space and having a meditation, having some sort of connection to the fire within you, that we're lit from within. We are photosynthesizing beings and we are light beings. There's studies that are showing that we emit light. We just don't have the apparatus right now to see it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? And the fact that you
When
have,
people see auras, are they seeing light?
oh yeah, we're electromagnetic beings. A lot of that electromagnetic field, that aura, what now there's a lot of it's called biofield. So they're trying to take the woo-woo out of it, so that way you can accept it more. So a lot of times science can validate a lot of things that religion has. I don't know, I wrote about this. I mean, I feel like a lot of religion is super poetic and spirituality is beautifully poetic. And a lot of our ancient sages were describing things that now scientists are confirming, right?
Hmm.
So this
Hmm.
biofield, for example, extends as far, much further than we actually realize. So, and we can affect, that entanglement. I mean, we're talking like quantum entanglement. We're talking all of these things intersect. The power of our thoughts matters. The
Right.
divine intelligence of our cells matters, right? And to me, defining beauty as the divine alignment on a cellular level is
Mhm.
something that I practice, right?
Right. Right.
So this is why I claim your paradise, to talk about your point about cleaning those apartments. What you said is they felt like they weren't investing their energy and effort because they felt that it wasn't theirs.
Exactly.
And that's a fallacy, because
Hmm.
wherever you are, you own that space for yourself. And
Exactly.
and you honor yourself by creating that beauty around you, whether it's a hotel, whether it's a rental, whether it's an Airbnb, it doesn't matter. But to
Hmm.
have that level of self-honor, that self-respect, and self-care, to say, hey, I deserve to have a clean space. I deserve to have a healthy space. And here's what I'm going to do about it.
And it's just so sad to me as a realtor. I constantly see places that people have let fall into complete disrepair. And it's not always just about money. It's also, again, to me, it's always a manifestation of some sense of self-worth. It truly is. Because even if you don't have money, you can clean something. Even if you don't have money, you can make sure that something is functional, even if you have to do it yourself. And I feel like a lot of that in our world right now, a lot of things have been done for us. And so it's been harder, especially for the younger people who didn't grow up with, grandpas who taught them how to, screw things in or whatever. They're not able to do it without somebody else intervening. And self-reliance is also a hugely important part of being a human being. I mean, how many of us could survive if the power grid went down totally?
Right, right.
How many of us could survive if all of our internet was gone?
Yep.
So it's an interesting thing. I mean, what you do is intersecting with all of that. I think what you're talking about is utterly fascinating and really important to the world of real estate, whether people acknowledge it or not, because real estate is all about space. Real estate is all about everything, and this entanglement that you talk about, that's also, in the more woo-woo way, you can call it the butterfly effect. Whereas if, a butterfly flaps its wings someplace else, it's affecting something way the hell out there. That is quantum
And
mechanics in a way. Yeah.
oh,
Entanglement. Yeah.
completely. It is. It
Yeah.
is. And by the way, Andrea, I don't know if you know this, but I didn't grow up in this country. I was born in Pakistan. I grew up in four generations. I learned those ancient ways from my great grandmother, my grandmother, my
Right.
aunties. And
Right.
so I know what it's like to come from humble beginnings and really learn how to make bone broth, learn how to milk a cow, learn how to weave things, learn how to dye things, what onion skins to use to dye this color, all of that. So that level, I realize now as I get older and I'm a mom, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is special. I had something so unique that not everybody from my generation gets.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. And th
Exactly.
that level of, I want to just say, it doesn't matter what you have, but you can create that beautiful thing. My mom would rip out her old party clothes and create dresses for me and my sister. And I did the same thing with my grandma's clothes. I would mix the East and Western in high school and create these, Eastern, Western kind of
Hmm.
crazy outfits because I was always sewing. So I was able to take something and recycle it. So everyone's talking about upcycling, upcycling, how cool it is. I'm like, I was
Your
taught
whole life you were
upcycling.
doing
I've been doing this,
it.
and suddenly it's like cool. Before I was like a super nerd. Now everything that I've been talking about and like telling everyone and sharing, and suddenly it's so awesome. And I'm like, finally, I think we're in a phase where we're finally recognizing that we are interconnected, that
Yes.
we need each other, especially post-pandemic. The idea of
Right.
community is important, the interconnectedness that we do affect one another, and we not only affect one another, we need one another.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you are like a breath of fresh air. This has been a wonderful experience for me. And everyone, you should read her book. You should get on her wavelength because what she's talking about is truly significant in the world. And it intersects completely with real estate and what we do. Like, as realtors, we're always meeting people at very, very transitional points in their lives. Somebody's died, somebody's gotten married, somebody's had a baby, somebody's having a second baby, somebody's kids have gone off to college, somebody's lost their job, somebody's moving for a job. All of these enormous transition points are unbelievable human experiences which need to be addressed in all the work that we do. So I just want to thank you so much for being here today. Um, I hope we get a chance to talk again very, very soon. And tell us again the name of your book and where people can reach you.
Thank you. The name of my book is Purgatory to Paradise. You can find it on Amazon and Audible, and you can find me at claimyourparadise.com.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Realizations Podcast. I hope our conversation has shed light on the true essence of real estate and the people behind it. As we wrap up, I want to extend my gratitude to our listeners for their support and engagement. Your feedback drives the heart of this podcast, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing to the Realizations Podcast and leaving a review. Your support helps us reach more listeners and spread our message of positivity in the real estate industry. Until next time, remember to keep an open mind, embrace empathy, and always seek the good in every situation. I'm Andrea Gordon signing off from Realizations. See you next time.